Today I'm joined by Emma Actis, horsewoman, writer, and founder of the Emma Actis Horsemanship. She is the creator of the Chestnut Mare Method, which the moment I read and looked into, I was like, more people have to know about this because of quite common associations with chestnut mares. So I'm looking forward to that, Emma. She's built a really powerful idea that horses aren't here to be dominated, they're here to be understood. With a background rooted in observation, empathy, and curiosity, Emma helps riders let go of the old show them who's boss mentality, conditioning, and step into a more gentle, more aware way of communicating. Emma, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So let's get straight into it. Everyone has a story, right? Everyone has this reason why they're either on a mission or they have this kind of special horse in their life. Where did it start with you when it comes to horses?
Well, I was surrounded by them my entire life. I grew up basically on my grandparents' cattle ranch. So we had a lot of the retired working horses, and we were taught to ride. And the way that we used the horses was kind of like a dirt bike. Like you take them out, you rip them around, and then you kind of put them away, and that's that. And I wanted like the Hollywood horse. I wanted the bond, the relationship. I wanted to braid them and to do all those magical things that you saw in movies or that I saw in movies. And I just felt like there was more to it. And and I just kind of always remember missing that piece. I was like, this can't be all there is to it. Like they're not just livestock that we run around. There's got to be more.
Was there a moment, obviously you're surrounded by, the way people use horses, it's close to the family, they have a job to do. Like, was
Mhm.
there a moment where you went, oh no, we're not doing that anymore? Or did it kind of develop?
It definitely, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, especially as a kid. And as you grow and learn how to learn and how to find new information, that changed a lot. And so, kind of horse by horse, I had a lot of little moments that kind of kept building and kept leading me. But I had one big incident with, um, I think I was in middle school, and my parents, I had somehow convinced them that I was ready for my first project horse. Back then I was horse crazy even about buying and selling horses or getting into training, and I had what it took. And we went and we got this little horse, and he had clearly been abused. And just because he was really mellow until if he was kind of activated and nervous and you were to raise your hand near his face, he would stagger backwards. And which broke my heart, obviously. And he was tough. I called him Charger because my first time in the round pen with him, I was learning how to do the join up like in Heartland. And I was like trying to figure it out with him. And I'd watch my YouTube videos of Warwick Schiller and Clinton Anderson. And then I'd go back out and I'd take my notes and try to figure it out. And he bluff charged me the first time. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna name him Charger. And I was too young probably to know to be nervous in these situations. I was just full of like determination. And he was a horse that when he was done, he was done. He would give you his all, and then he would say, I like he would start getting really frustrated, really um kind of worked up and not having a good time and tossing his head quite a bit and not wanting to go where we're wanting to go or do what we're wanting to do. And I would just be like, frankly, I don't have the tools to handle this. I can't make you do anything, buddy. So I'd get off. And I was really worried about it forming kind of a bad habit in him of just never wanting to be ridden, but he always wanted to come out the next day. But then he had a limit. And I kind of did all this work by myself at my parents' place. And then, summertime came around and we went to my grandparents' ranch, and all our family was there. And there was an instance where he started saying no. We had a really good ride, and it was maybe shorter than I would have wanted. Would have wanted to go for the trail rides. They have a lot of land, and we wanted to go ride, and um, I just couldn't get him across the small. creek crossing. And I was like, you know what? Historically, like we'll go tomorrow. We'll do it first thing tomorrow. He'll be happy to come out. And my uncle was a big rodeo guy and roper and horseman, and he, has worked with a lot of difficult horses. I'm sure he broke several, like and he could definitely ride. And he's like, oh no, 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 like you don't get bossed around by a horse. Like if you want to ride, you got to ride. You're going to build a bad habit. And he got on him, and he's quite a bit bigger than me, and Charger's is a much smaller horse. So it was definitely a workout to be running him around. And he took him out on these roads that we have, and he came back. Both of them were dripping in sweat, and he got off that horse and he said, "That horse is mean." And I remember being so shocked because I wanted to believe it. I was like, wow, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know that that's how you had to do it. But I also remember that being a moment that I have had to come back to a lot and revisit and realize like what I would have wanted for him, and that it definitely hurt too in a way, because I felt like I had built this relationship and this trust with him that, his old life of being forced to do things was over, and that if he wanted to be done, he could be done. And that was how it was with me. And then to have it completely be shattered for him in that moment, I remember being really sad. And it just kind of it was also a moment where I realized that not everyone has the same approach, and that not everything is going to suit every horse, and not every person is going to suit every horse. And that was definitely one that I sticks out in my head and that I remember quite often.
Wow. And how old were you been there? You said middle school. What age would that?
Yeah, maybe 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many moments there where I'm like, I can resonate with that. Um, especially like he will do it or I will show him. And
Yeah.
just a couple of words, just so the listeners can maybe relate more to when you said he bluff charged you, what does that mean
Mm.
in the round?
Oh, yeah. So if you're familiar with round pin work, they're loose, so you don't have a rope on them. And what I was attempting to learn is that when you add energy to your body, you can move the horse forward faster in the pin. So they go around, and you can raise them up into a canter, or you can kind of start stepping in front of them and get them to look towards you. And then as they start looking towards you, you can draw them into you. And that's what I was attempting to do. I was attempting to have him kind of shift directions, and instead of like doing that Rainer stop, face the fence, run the other direction, to really start looking towards me. And he had looked towards me and then ran several steps towards me with his ears back, and like did a big stop and huff in front of me. And I was able to shoo him away too. I only had a rope, I think, or maybe like a stick and string, I don't remember. But I was like, oh, he was trying to tell me to get lost, I think. And and he thankfully, didn't wasn't fully committed to those ideas, but he definitely had something to say at the start there.
Yeah, sometimes horses are there to bring us the lessons, as frustrating and as maybe triggered we are, like looking back on it, I'm sure. Well, do you have a reflection of your younger self where you're like, oh yeah, like now I know what I was doing, not wrong, because you're right in what you say. You work with the tools and the knowledge you have at the time. But if you reflect back on the version you are today and that girl in the round pen, how would you do things differently?
Oh, everything has changed since then, which thankfully for that, it's but I actually have been lucky enough. I've had two horses for almost 10 years. And so I got them both fairly early at the start of my horsemanship journey. And so I've actually, every time I revisit them, there was a period where I had kind of put a lot of work into them at 15 years old or so. And then I went to college, and my later years in high school were really busy, and I just wasn't really spending a lot of time with them. I had one of them go into a partial lease on the coast of my college town, and I saw her once every couple months. And then my other mare was just kind of like a pasture pet for a while. And I was able to pull them out and bring them to where I am now and revisit all the training that had kind of been instilled in them from a younger version of me.
Mm.
And that was really interesting. And just the difference in me, mostly, the horse is always going to be the horse and they're always going to be honest. But um, I remember all the things that I struggled with them and how I had a handle on it now. And I could really get to the core of what I was trying to do with them. And but it was funny to see that what they were expecting, that they had plenty of loopholes to get around what I was trying to do as a kid. I couldn't kind of quite nail that consistency just yet. So my pony especially was like doing her best to just get out of work because she usually could have, because I just wasn't quite coordinated enough to keep her focused. But it was it was really, it's really cool to see, and I've definitely improved in being able to for one know what I'm going in there to do, like going in with a plan, and then being able to follow through and picking things one at a time instead of just kind of going all in and trying to get it all done at once. I'd say are big changes for sure.
And where's Charger now? So what happened with that incident after your uncle tried,
So I
said he's mean?
have parents who love me very much, and they said, you know what? We're not going to ignore that. I think that it's time to find another home for the horse. And of course, I didn't want to, but um, we also found a fabulous place for him, a really great family, and we knew them, and he fell in love with their daughter, and he would whinny to her like it was a movie. It was everything I wanted, actually, funny enough. But his pasture was kind of on their house was on a hill, and his pasture wrapped around and could be on top, and so he could see down when they came out of the front door, and he'd whinny and follow her along the fence when she was walking to school. And um and he lived out his days there. Yeah, that was his last forever home. So I think it was a safe landing for him, which was lucky, I think.
I love that. Like in a movie, we all want that, don't we? We walk into the field and they just prick their ears and they come running. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The Chestnut Mare Method, it's such a beautiful name. So can you share with everyone listening, for people that maybe don't know what you mean by this and how it's come to be?
Yes, absolutely. I have been working on my specific approach to horsemanship. And I think, too, with everything, all the information that there is out there, every horseman is just trying to be as well educated as we can. So a lot of the information isn't new, but it's more about, I think, the trainers that you resonate. It's kind of how they deliver the information to you. And so this is my delivery method, and how I came to understand horses and how I understand training. And it's kind of everything. It's my approach, and I'm working on kind of quantifying that more, and putting up more videos on exercises and kind of the nitty gritty of what I do. And so this is yeah, everything that I do with horses and with different horses and my mentality about it. And I love the name too. And I have all chestnut mares. Apparently I have a type. They've all kind of found me one by one, but um, I loved it because of the kind of negative stereotype about a chestnut mare and about how they are feisty and hard to work with and maybe a little difficult. And I thought, well, if this method is gentle enough and convincing enough for a chestnut mare, I feel like maybe some other people would want to know what it is I'm doing.
Oh my gosh, I can think of a long list of people that I know with the chestnut mare. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about why they are, in your words, slightly different to, say, a bay mare? Or do you think it's nothing to do with that at all? Do you have your own, like you said, interpretation of the chestnut mare?
I'd say I definitely have my own interpretation. I grew up with what you might call a stereotypical chestnut mare or red mare, and she was feisty, she was hot, she was a lot of horse, and that I remember that sticking in my head. I was so proud that I learned to ride on a chestnut mare. I felt very special. And but now all my girls are so different. I have I swear I have one of every variety. I have if you're on my social media, you've seen Dixie, she's my paint. She's fabulous. She came to me recently. I have a Mustang, a liver chestnut Mustang mare, who's proving to be so stubborn. But it's been really, really fun working with her. And then I have my two girls for that I've had for a long time. And one of them's a flaxen, and the other's just a true chestnut. So I have, I think, every variety just about there is. So every one of them I got as a project horse, and I was going to sell them, and that was going to be my business model. And here we are. So um, I think we're going to cap it at these four and say I've got my chestnut mares. I think I'm maybe selling project horses isn't necessarily my avenue. I happen to keep them all, right?
And is there like a pattern that despite their differences in maybe reactivity, maybe some of them, you said one's very stubborn, like do you see a pattern in all of them, which is why and how this chestnut mare method has come about?
I would say, yeah, I think that specifically what we may be talking about when um, the whole conversation about chestnut mares being difficult comes up is that they uh, they really you can't really boss them around. They've got an element of push back in them, where they'll do the classic like pin in your ears and kind of tell you what's what. And I would say they each have a touch of that. And so I can't say for sure if that's because they're chestnut mares or mares or just their personalities, but I would definitely say that they cannot be bossed around. That's for sure.
And so in this like understanding, it's almost like a bit of a mutual respect, right? You're like,
Definitely.
you get the boundary, that's fine. It's like a relationship. There are boundaries and everyone has their own values. So how does this method look in practice from your side as the handler rider and then also from the horse side? Like, how does it actually look? Can you describe it to us how this looks in practice?
Yeah. I'd say the foundation is learning how horses communicate, what they're looking for, and really learning to adapt to that. We think that horses are really in kind of an artificial environment with the human world these days. And they may be born into it, but they're just like ours. Their nervous system was developed for a much different lifestyle. And so we think that we're adapting them to us and to what we want to do and to our sport or to our riding, and that they need to learn how we ride and how we communicate. And I think the shift really is learning to understand what they need and what they're looking for out of us, and that really opens a way of communicating with them that doesn't rely on force or control, and can really just be between the two of you and using their natural language of body language and their natural herd instincts to have a leader and um, to want to play too. So many horses really do enjoy play and having a friend and all these things.
I had no idea you were going to say play, but I and it's actually something as a therapist, I'm a bodyworker chiropractor, and some of my aftercare, depending on the horse and the environment and the handler skill, I will say bring in some play. And I get a very common look of what's what's play. So what's your like how do you show people what play is with horses?
Well, I that's a really good question. It's actually something that I came across because I was working with a lot of Mustangs, and these horses would play, and they'd play with each other, and they wanted to play with people, and by play I mean they'd kick around those big inflatable balls and just run around with each other and jump in the air, and they like to pull things, hats off of heads, and just kind of have a ball. And they love to run, and I was just thinking about it, and we always encouraged that, and we did so much liberty with the horses at the barn that I was training them. And the horses that were happy and curious and really playful were took uh, to liberty like a fish to water. Like they just, it was their favorite thing. I mean, they'd do it in the pasture, they'd come running to come play with you. And it was really great. And I'm having a similar experience with my mare Dixie. And so I turn her out and work her in the same arena. And so we kind of have an interesting way to navigate that because how does she know when the halter comes off if it's time for her to go run around and get her zoomies out, or if I'm wanting to kind of be connected to her. And so I always let her run for a little bit because she's a strong girl and's gotta burn some energy every day. And then she'll come running to me when she's done. And she'll just stick to me after that. She goes, all right, I want to do whatever you're up to. And so I think that, I'm working on applying that to other horses. And it's been, I don't know, it just, when they want to, you can feel it. You feel this enthusiasm. And if we can create that for them, I think it's really special.
And for those of the listeners that are thinking, oh, I would love to walk into the field and my horse comes running, how and where would you start with? I suppose
Yeah.
it's going to be they want to enjoy their work with you. So if it's one step before we can get to that step, where would you start with something like that? If someone said to you, how do I get my horse to come running and enjoy work with me?
Yeah, I mean, I do positive reinforcement. I think that I do it with treats and I but that alone isn't enough to create enthusiasm in your horse. It definitely can get them interested, but if you're going to be really I do it in a sort of clicker training style, only I mark, I don't have a clicker, I mark with my voice. And I will that really helps them understand that they are around you, they are going to spend energy, but in a way that feels good to them and feels rewarding and feels interesting. And horses really do love mental stimulation and trying to find the puzzle and walking that line between, when I'm teaching her a new trick, you need to be rewarding and acknowledging not just the end result of what you're looking for, but the effort along the way to kind of keep them motivated. And so really building your motivation and then also working on, I call it draw. I'm not sure if this is a universal term, but the pull that when horses are in a herd with one another, if one of them walks off, the other will want to go with them. And because they're kind of in tune with each other. And it's the same thing. This is what happens in the round pen when you are working with a horse and you get them to face up and to join up and to actively walk towards you, chances are you can walk all around and they're going to be drawn, hooked on. And building those two things together. And then also knowing Dixie has a very high level of available energy. I'd say she'd run anywhere if she could. Not every horse is going to run everywhere. They might walk to you, which I think is also really special. So it depends on the horse if they're running or walking, but you can definitely get them to come to you in the pasture by kind of building up those two things.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then have you, I'm just thinking for someone who might ask, what happens if my horse has a negative association with food? So they get nippy or they get too in my face. How would you suggest someone works with that kind of horse?
That's a really good question. I feel like this is where kind of the art of horse training comes in because everyone has their own creative approach. I There's a couple things you could do. Some horses that are maybe a little too food aggressive, love to be scratched. They have an itchy spot that just makes them totally put their little lip out and just melt. And if that feels like if they seek that out enough, that could feel like a really good result to them too. I've also seen trainers where they don't give the treat from their hand anymore. They'll have a small bowl or bucket and they'll click and toss the cookie into the bucket. And so the horse is still getting a food reward, but it's not associated with it becoming coming out of your hand or being in your bubble. And that's really good at working with horses that maybe are a little pushy. And so you can kind of maintain your space and that kind of level of safety. And if you do want to work with a food reward, that can be a way to um, kind of create that space that you need and still really mark the behavior that you want in the horse with a positive food reward.
That makes sense. You wrote, and I've got it on your website, which is a difficult horse is not a challenge, but an invitation to be kinder. Really powerful. And I know in my experience, and again, people that either message me and say, my horse is struggling to this, he's been labeled as difficult. So, how do we deal with these difficult horses?
That is my favorite thing I've ever written because it's a lesson I have to learn all the time. As a horse trainer specifically, I don't know if this resonates with horse owners, but we always want to kind of make ourselves on the difficult horses, the horse that no one can handle. We want to be able to come in and work with, and that kind of attracts people for sure, especially when you're just getting going. Um, but I've had to learn that whenever I am kind of butting heads with my horse, it's because I need to take a step back and I need to evaluate if what I'm asking them is it a fair question right now, because the horse I don't think we talk about this enough, but the horse is always right, always honest. And like they will never not be a horse and they will always respond to the world in the way that their nervous system has evolved to. Like they will never not be a horse. They will never lie to you. So if they are struggling with something, it's because they are reacting honestly to all the information they have at that moment. And so if you can kind of break apart that moment, and I'll just pick an example, but like if a horse, maybe you didn't have time to give them turnout that morning, or maybe, you've been really focused on working towards a show or a competition of some kind, and maybe they haven't gotten the rest days that they usually get, or if you just evaluate like all the pieces there that are normally there for their success, like is it a cold morning? Did it rain? Did they get rugged? Like all the things that kind of add up to your usually happy horse. Or if you haven't experienced that and you have begun and are continuing with a difficult horse, um, sometimes we think that revisiting the basics is kind of a lack of progress or a loss of progress. And I think that for us humans, we juggle so many things. We have our calendar dates and we got to be here at this time, and this is my barn hour, and then after this, I'm going to clean my stall for 30 minutes, and then I have to go. And you know, maybe you aren't working with the horse that you have that day, and just putting down those expectations and just really looking at every step of your process. When I put the halter on, do they look happy and engaged? Or am I kind of ignoring that part to get them to the arena? And then once we're in the arena, once we're on, they just don't feel like themselves or we're having a trouble. And I think starting all the way at the beginning, it feels like, well, if I start at the beginning, it'll be 3 years before I get anywhere. But it's one of those things that, once you take your time to maybe bridge some gaps, then it pays off exponentially later on down the line.
Mm. Really great advice. Really, really. And in your experience, what's the biggest misconception about leadership with riders?
That is such a good question. I think the biggest misconception is that because that just by walking into the pen with your horse, that you are the leader, that it's just intrinsically there. And then I think the other part to that is that if it isn't, that the answer to becoming a leader is going to be through dominance or force or an aspect of a power dynamic. And I, I see this a lot in just believing that because you have the halter on the horse and not the other way around, that you are the leader. And that is not always the case. It a lot of horses that are spooky or really buddy sour, barn sour, or herd bound are lacking a leader when they're with you, and that's what they're saying. Is they say, I feel unsafe and alone out here, and I don't trust you as a part of my herd to look out for me. And so I would say that's a big misconception for sure.
Mm. I am thinking about like the years with some of the horses I've worked with, some of the clients, and I've even had it moments even recently where I go and see a horse and I've had a long list of things that are behaviorally incorrect or out,
Hmm.
and I'll go up and then we'll go in the pen and I do a lot of assessment work from like posture, static, and how they move before I get my hands on. And I've noticed a few times where I'll go in and we'll watch and the owner will be like, he's fit perfect today. He's not showing you the thing that I've been calling you about. So my answer is like, well, I'm going to treat what I'm seeing today, but there's nothing really wrong here. And I will say my advice when that one, and I love your opinion, is I'd say to them is treat and ride the horse you have on the day, not the one you had yesterday or the one that you maybe had last week. Um, and especially with horses in rehab that have, say, had a really bad injury and they are struggling, I always say to people, if you have say you've sprained your knee or you've had an adjustment to your pelvis and you think to yourself, well, tomorrow I'm going to be fine, but I'm a little bit sore. Like, because it's in your body to slow down. But I say to you, well, horses are trying to tell us that as well every day. Um, and so on that, do you have like a little checklist in your mind before you go in to work with even someone else's horse before you're like, well, this is my goal? You mentioned earlier, like I like to have a plan, but also I'm guessing you have a checklist before what is actually in front of you and whether you have to adapt your plan.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that what you said about working and riding the horse that you have today is so good, and I think that's so true. And I really think that when I go in and it's maybe not exactly going to plan, or I would go in to the horse, and I definitely have a way that I want things to go. And I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna go in, and I would like to work on them facing up, or hooking on, or whatever. And I will see if they are at the point where we can work on that, or if we have to kind of maybe put in the building blocks to even start to work on that. And so it kind of is all you kind of give them a little nudge and then watch and see if they're ready for that, what they do with that, what they do with you and your energy, and kind of how they are responding to it. And so within probably a couple minutes of working with a horse, I have a really good idea of what they need, at least for that session, and what they kind of maybe some patterns that they have in their history, and you can really get a really good idea of how a horse views people, how they view work, how they have been, the patterns that they go into. And from just going in and putting the halter on, you don't even get to the round pin yet. And then you get in there and you can see what the relationship is like to moving forward, moving off your energy. Are they really in tune to you? Or are they totally off out to lunch? And so just kind of getting the temperature of the water, I think. And then from there, it's very similar. It's like an evaluation process of just watching how do they just kind of their go-to response to whatever it is that I'm asking, and then I can say, oh, okay, well, I know which little piece I'm going to take out and work on first.
Obviously, this is the first time we've met. You have a real like calming voice, if you want to call it feminine energy about you. It's very like clearly a lot of awareness, softness, intuition. How do you see that energy showing up in your horsemanship work? And have you molded this? Like, have you recognized that I need to be a little bit like this? Or is this just who you've been from the start?
Both. This is definitely, um, I think core to who I am, and I've kind of shaped what I do around who I am. And I think that that's how we get our best results because, um, at the end of the day, I was talking to my aunt, who's a teacher, about consistency, and that if you were going to be, because for example, what we were doing is I had shown her my Liberty work with Dixie, and then I'd handed Dixie to her and was like, okay, and I'm gonna have you try it. And she got it good for about 2 times, and then was not quite following through in a way that communicated her kind of ability to be a leader. If we're gonna go back to that, and so Dixie kind of stopped, and she cocked her hip and was like, yeah, give me a call when when you've sorted it out. And she totally checked out. And I was, explaining this. If you are going to be consistent and you're going to follow through, you have to really believe in what you're doing. You can't, if you've set a plan that every time your horse refuses to jump, you're going to give him a little whack behind your leg. You can't do that effectively if you get a little twinge in your stomach every time you do it. If you don't believe it, you're never going to be able to execute it. And so I think that just following your natural instincts, everyone has their own mix of their own personality. And so there can be two, like one horse and its relationship with two different people will be totally different because the way those personalities and experiences mesh is super unique. And there is no way to completely replicate the work of another horse person because of that kind of ineffable thing that happens there.
And I think this is sometimes just slightly off topic, but the frustration of things like social media, because you mentioned earlier that, people working with horses, men, women, we all do it because we fundamentally love horses and we want to show people how amazing they are and the connection and what they can do. And I think we often underestimate, like someone like yourself has taken years of probably failing countless times and having moments of crying and thinking I want to give up. And someone said to me the other day that when it's soul destroying, when my horse doesn't want to come to me, and I'm thinking it is, and I get it, and oh my God, I remembered so many frustrations. But you pick yourself up, and there's always something to be learnt in it. There's always a little lesson where we've just probably been in maybe in our head too much, or we see someone like yourself who makes it look so natural and easy. But we also have to recognize that it's been a process, right? And it's probably been a process of a lot of recognizing. I love you said earlier with your like your notebook and your pen, making notes and going and trying it. I can just visualize it now, you doing it.
Yeah, and it's I think so many horse people too are who are maybe at the point where I am, where we have a pretty good foothold on what we're doing and where we want to go, but we're far from uh, being at the top, and that's not necessarily even everyone's goal, but the looking at everyone else and being like, well, they make that look so easy, that exists everywhere, and oh boy, yeah, the soul destroying moments are definitely something that happens, and for sure, the harder it is, the bigger the lesson, and but they're tough to experience and harder to take that and to learn from it too.
Mm. What's the biggest lesson horse or a horse has taught you about emotional strength and vulnerability?
That one is so good. Um, Gosh, I don't totally know how to quantify this, but just um, I've done a lot of watching of horses, and I feel like that's kind of where a lot of my method comes from is the observation side of it, and I watch them, and especially kind of if you're learning. and maybe you go in and you kind of fumble quite a bit, and then you turn your horse out and you just watch them, and they're so gentle and so soft and so forgiving. And I felt so at odds with them for so long because I wanted to go in and maybe be the cowboy and run them around and that whole show 'em who's boss kind of mentality. But then if you just sit down and you watch them, and they have just such a gentleness to them for being so big, and they're so easy to scare. Like there's something so innocent and so delicate about them. And I just really looked at it as like, man, I got some work to do. I've got to be more like that. And because if they can be so gentle, then surely I don't have to be so big. There's got to be the subtlety that I'm missing. And yeah, I really think watching them is just an unending supply of wisdom for sure.
I feel like you're almost saying we need to be more horse.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I never got anywhere by being more human.
In a world of AI, be more horse. I love it.
Yes, be a horse.
How do you help riders? So if someone was to come to you, how do you actually help them start noticing what their horses are trying to communicate to them?
Yeah, I have several people that I am working with, and everyone comes in with different questions and different goals, and their horses had different life experiences. And some people have had their horse since they were babies, and some people have just gotten this horse and they actually have no information about him. It was sort of a rescue case, and so we just want to know what the next best step is. And I will my sort of process when it comes to other people's horses is to go in and hear like what are your challenges, and what are your goals, and then let's show me the horse. Show me what you're working with and what he does that concerns you, or that you don't understand. And then I'll give you my opinion on what I think we could do. And I also like to go in and be with the horse and just kind of point out some things that I notice, and just kind of talk my way through my process and what I pay attention to. And then I'll do a couple things that, maybe if the horse is struggling with tension in their face, I'll kind of point out where the wrinkles are around their nostrils, or kind of that eyebrow up motion around their eyes gives them those triangle eyes. And um, show them a couple ways to help the horse release that. And then show them the difference afterwards, and be like, these are the little things that I like to pay attention to. And it seems like nothing's happening at first, like I'm, maybe moving an eyebrow muscle, but then we'll go back, we'll revisit what you're worried about, and we'll kind of see how he's different now. And so I think it really comes into just sometimes having an outside eye. Again, you don't know what you don't know, and knowing what to pay attention to. I always like the whole, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's what I want for people. I don't want to protect what I'm doing. I want everyone to be able to know what they're looking for and have that relationship with their horse. So just showing them what I'm seeing and talking through my method, and just giving them the people, the tools to see and to work with their horse.
Yeah, it's becoming more observant and teaching
Definitely.
is our, as humans, the main communication method is voice. Although there's a lot of us also that communicate via our body as well without even knowing that we are portraying an energy that, or a posture that might actually be quite intimidating, maybe a little bit assertive, or maybe just really sad. So yeah, it sounds like it's a lot about awareness and observation. And like you said, it might seem very subtle, like you said, the eyebrow or the wrinkles on the
Mhm.
muzzle, but it's all connected. So yeah, I like that approach. And if a rider was listening right now and they're feeling frustrated, quote unquote difficult horse, what are three very simple steps they could take or they could do just to start to, I didn't want to say rebuild trust because we don't even know if the trust is there. Just start to understand what this difficult horse is saying.
Yeah, I can go through I do a checklist to kind of see where my horse's mind is at. So I can go through that. And I would say I love groundwork. I think that it's maybe overlooked a lot, but if you think about the way that horses communicate and bond to each other, it's face to face. They're both on the ground, and so we have invented riding. And so I think that sometimes if you're struggling with the secondary language, which is, you know, for horses, it's learning to communicate with people, but especially through riding, that you kind of go back and get on the ground level and work with their first language, which is body language and having a body to interact to. And my checklist, I really think that if you can do these three things, you have a pretty good understanding of your horse's mind and that your horse feels pretty good. And so first, I love to flex them, where you're not pulling their head around, but you would stand at their wither and you pick up on your rope and your halter, and you want their nose to touch their girth about. And the reason for that is horses have two joints in their poll, one of them that lets them do the up and down motion, and one that does the side to side flexion. And if they're tense or worried, they actually can't move that side to side joint. The way the muscle activates it, it makes that impossible to move. So a horse that can't flex is carrying some kind of tension. So if they can't reach all the way around, then you know he's holding on to something. And you can actually really help them let go of it by working on those flexion exercises. And you really want the horse to be reaching and you don't want to be pulling them. And so that's kind of a thing in itself. But uh, I also do a hip yield where um, you know, if I were to look at the hip with kind of a intent, you know, as if you were about to run after it or something, if you were a lion maybe, or the way, I don't know if you've seen the way border collies will crouch and kind of stalk things, and livestock respond to that. You know, they really understand eye contact and energetic stuff in bodies, and uh, I want to be able to kind of push at the hip with my energy, and if they cross over softly, then they have a give in their body again, and you know that they are tuned into you and to what you're doing. And then I also will go and move the shoulder over, and the shoulder is kind of where it's all at. If you can move the shoulder away from you, without moving the hip or without the head tossing, or it's really soft, then you know that your horse is really soft through its top line, and all those muscles that activate during stress are loosey goosey and feeling really good. And so if all of that is there, which it usually isn't, a lot of horses, even horses that I work every day, I have to revisit kind of, and this isn't the end all be all exercise. It's more like a compass to point to what maybe your next step is. And so if for the life of you, you can't get them to flex, then you know you've got some work there somewhere in the neck or in their tension that they're holding. And you know, if you they're just totally tuned out to you and you can't get them to move that hip over, then you know they don't see you as a leader and they're not particularly paying attention to you or whatever. And if they don't move their shoulder, the shoulder will be where they store all uh, that tension as energy. And so sometimes you'll move it and they'll just absolutely hop around and kind of explode. And then you know, oh well, he's kind of holding on to something that has a springiness to it. So it's just kind of a compass for you to find what which you know isolate maybe what's going on a little bit more.
I like the way you almost separated it into those three parts. And I've not heard about the shoulder before being like the cherry on top, really. So that's interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, what's one lesson a horse has taught you that you couldn't have learned anywhere else?
Oh, that is so good. So many. I feel like I can only learn my life lessons through horses, but I think it would have to do with really letting go of expectations and the idea of results and timelines and kind of these, I don't know if it's ego or what it is, but our constructs that we've developed that kind of the world order or whatever. And uh, we have a show on Sunday, so this needs to be dialed in by da da da. Or, I have to trailer you, so you have to get in, and or I only have an hour today, so I can't do turnout, and we got to get right to riding, and all these little moments of where our world kind of bleeds into theirs. And I've really had to learn to just be present and learn how to be the rock in the storm. We think so much about therapy horses, and that they have this intrinsic gentleness to them that is very therapeutic, and that they have so many uses in that department. But um, I I've also learned that so many horses need that from you before they can do that. And so for you to be the calm one and the certain one and be in tune and observing, and just to kind of get out of your head a little bit about what you're wanting to do and what you're thinking about, and tune into what's happening. What is your body doing right now? What is their body doing right now? It's a meditation of sort, I think, because you have your thoughts of, oh, I really want to do that. And you kind of have to, well, I don't know if that's something that we're going to do right now. And I don't know if that's a fair question to ask of the horse just yet. I think we have to stay with what we're working on, and to just really let go. And as a person who prides herself on my maybe fixations and my hardworking nature, it can be really hard to let go of a goal that way, and to know that sometimes the best way to get there isn't just by kind of grinding on without reason, and it's to sit and to be in your body and be in the moment, and just, I mean, smell the roses sometimes, I guess. It's a hard one. I got to learn it all the time, but I was getting too much positive reinforcement out in the world for being so fixated on my goals. I don't think anything but a horse could have slowed me down.
So well said. And I realize as well, they are the most honest reminders to let go and to slow down. So thank you. Really appreciate your time and for joining us. For people who want to find out more about what you do, where can they find you?
So I am on Instagram and TikTok I do short videos. I'm getting on YouTube soon. I'm very excited. My handle right now is Wild Horse Wild Woman for social media. And then my website is going to have more and more of my stuff as well. And that's emmaactishorsemanship.com, Actis spelled Actis. And that is me. That's where you can find me.
Thank you. I'll put some links to the website, Instagram, all that at the bottom of the notes anyway. But thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you for having me. These questions were absolutely great.
Cheers.